Good afternoon, good morning, good day, wherever you are. Hello, and welcome to this month's episode of Ms.Dr.Kenya. It is October 2024, and I am excited, as I always am. But this month, I am excited because Kaleidoscope Wellness and Education Group, we are sponsoring the National School Board Association's Council of Urban Boards of Education's annual conference. The NSBA Cube is an important conference for us because it brings together school boards from around the nation that focus on underserved and marginalized populations. And so our sponsorship of the Cube this year really does underscore and highlight Kaleidoscope's commitment to making sure that students from traditionally underserved and marginalized communities like BIPOC and LGBTQ disabled students, that they are thought about, that they are given an opportunity to be in classrooms that are equitable, that focus on them, and that they are set up for success. So our sponsorship of the Cube perfectly aligns with our mission and vision. With that being said, we thought it only made sense that this month that we take the time to speak with a school board member. And we didn't get just anybody. We got our own local school board member here in Prince George's County, Maryland, Dr. Zipporah Miller. Guys, this is a treat. Dr. Miller is deeply passionate about advocating for equitable access to high quality education for all students, regardless of their backgrounds. Her dedication to ensuring equal educational opportunities extends beyond her professional role, reflecting a personal mission shaped by her journey from Nairobi, Kenya, to international diplomatic spheres and academic achievements. Dr. Miller exemplifies the transformative power of education and remains steadfast in her commitment to promoting educational equity on a global scale. In addition to her work with professional organizations, Dr. Miller has made a substantial impact in the textbook industry. Guys, this is amazing. Dr. Miller collaborated with Pearson of all organizations and served as the lead author for two, not one, but two kindergarten through eighth grade science programs, Interactive Science and Elevate Science. So these programs have been widely adopted across the United States and internationally. Guys, they're using this in Dubai. In this role, Dr. Miller not only authored the content, but also worked closely with teachers, school leaders, and central office staff to ensure successful implementation at the district and school levels. Her dedication to advancing science education has left a significant mark on curriculum development and teaching practices worldwide. Okay? We know how to pick them here in Prince George's County. So with no further ado, I excitedly want to introduce you to Dr. Zipporah Miller. Dr. Miller, I am honored to have you join me today. How are you?
I am doing well and equally excited to be here. I am ecstatic that our paths connected and our vision in terms of mental health aligned. So
Yeah.
I am equally excited. Um, but I know you introduced all of the accomplishments that I have and many which I am proud of, but I would be remiss if I didn't say this would not have been possible without the support of my wonderful husband for over 30 years, but also an educator and just as passionate about education as I am. And one of his main foci is really spending time to ensure that he mentors young men
Mm.
of all colors, of all races, from all different backgrounds to ensure that they see that they have a voice. And coincidentally, I was blessed to have two young boys who are now two young men who went through the Prince George's County Public School System, very diverse in how they grew up and their educational background. So one of my sons was a talented and gifted student and is excelling now. Has gotten his master's and is in the Army. Then I have another son who is just as brilliant and received special education services from Prince George's County Public Schools,
Wow.
excelled and is a freshman now studying chemical engineering and
Mhm.
also running track for his university. So I am excited.
And you have lots of reasons to be excited. I think that's absolutely amazing. I am so happy to hear that your children did, in fact, go to Prince George's County's school system. My daughter is a proud graduate of Prince George's County School Board school system as well. She went to the Center of Visual Performing Arts at Suitland High School. She actually got a scholarship to sing at North Carolina A&T. And so Prince George's County has served us well. Thank you for your leadership um, and your work to making sure that our babies can have all the opportunities that they have right now. I appreciate you for your contribution.
Oh, thank you.
So let's just start with like an obvious question, right? Can you just briefly explain what do school board members do?
Wow, Dr. Kenya, I'm so glad you asked that question. And many ask it as they should. Um, I'm going to start by just saying that many times the role of the superintendent and the role of the school board member is confused by numerous stakeholders. So I want to first distinguish the two. Our superintendent, who is hired by the Board of Education, and it's different in different districts, in Prince George's County, currently the law states that the county executive hires the superintendent, but the Board of Education oversees the work of the superintendent. So the superintendent's role is to oversee the day-to-day operations. So he is the one who hires his staff. He is the one who makes recommendations for curriculum. He is the one, and as you hear me say, make recommendations. He's the one who oversees the day-to-day operations for the school system. The school board, on the other hand, our role is governance, and governance includes many areas. So, as long as providing oversight to the superintendent, so while the superintendent serves the day-to-day operations, we need to ensure that he is managing effectively, he's administering the day-to-day operations effectively, ensuring that every school, every student has the opportunity to pursue a world-class education. So that's one. Another area is in setting policy. And of course, the policy governs what is done by the school system. So the superintendent is responsible for implementing the policies that we set. So is a very critical role in ensuring that our school system offers an equitable education. So we establish policies that govern operations, that govern the safety, that govern health, that govern student discipline, and more, and also curriculum, which is the day-to-day, what students have to see day in their classrooms. So that's just an example of policy. Another area is budget oversight. So in budget oversight, we get our budget approved by the county council. And so when the county council, and I will say we get 60% of the budget from Prince George's County. And we have to ensure that the superintendent is actually setting a budget that meets the needs of every student in our county and is able to implement the policies that were set. So what happens is we as a board seek out from the community, what do you feel your budget priorities are? We review those priorities because we are advocates for the community. We review those priorities and add them to the budget recommendations. We give them to the superintendent, and then the superintendent creates a budget for us.
Mm.
In that budget, we look at how he's allocated funds, but more importantly, we also look at has he included the budget priorities that our community is seeking, right? And then as we go through, we have discussions because we know that we only have a set amount of budget, a set amount in the budget. So we have some discourse around what do we do now? There's a strategic plan that if something can happen immediately, that we know that it'll happen maybe next year or in the course of 3 to 4 years, so that no priority is ignored. Every priority is treated as important because it's important to our community. But we also know, just like we have a budget in the home, we have a budget for the school system. So we have to ensure that we're meeting all of those priorities in a timely manner, but also a strategic manner. And last, and certainly not least, curriculum and program decisions are made. I served as the chair of the Academic Achievement Committee, where we look at the programs that are being implemented. This year, we focused on math because mathematics was an area in which we weren't doing well. So we really dug deep into looking at what is happening in the schools. What is the central office saying should be happening in the schools? Then we said, okay, so now if this is what central office is saying should happen, then let us look at it from the perspective of the principals and the teachers. They're the ones who are implementing the curriculum, right? So let's hear their voice. How are they saying it's working out? Because this helps us as board members make recommendations in terms of changes we would like to see. And then last but not least, we hear the student voice and we look at the data. And if the data doesn't reflect where we feel we need to go, then we're having discussions about what are some things that we need to change. I feel that in my role as a school board member, it is so important that we advocate for the community, and the number one stakeholder in our community is the student. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the areas that I sought immediately was, how do I amplify student voice? And I did work with our high school first. I started with the high school student government, and I brought them to the table and they asked me this very question: what does a school board member do? And then we talked about some areas in which they can advocate as students, and they've been able to make headway understanding how to work with the school student with the boards, school board, how to also work with other legislators to push legislation forward, advocating for their students. And that is probably one of the most exciting pieces of work, to see student leaders actually advocate for different priorities and to see them coming to fruition.
I am so excited to hear you talk about the importance of student voice. So, Ms.Dr. Kenya, I have a youth council, and the purpose of the youth council is to give voice to the data. Yes, I can, gather the information. I can read the journal articles, the peer-reviewed articles, the information coming from the government. I can look at the data and I can make all types of determinations, right? That's what I'm trained to do as a doctor of clinical psychology. However, as you know, the data is only as good as the story behind the data. So I can look at the numbers and I can come up with hypotheses, but if I don't know the voices or the stories that behind that data, then the numbers don't really mean much. You got to understand, what does that 67% represent? What does it look like? How is it experienced? And so oftentimes, I do have members of the youth council come on, and Ms.Dr. Kenya, and I have conversations with them about some of the same stuff. And I ask them, from your perspective, what does this mean? And it really is enlightening to hear what it means from their perspective. Because as adults, again, we have ideas, but to
Mhm.
hear it from them first, it's amazing. It really does help you to um really dig deep. I wish I could find a better way to say that in your advocacy. It brings life to the data in a way that just reading an article could not do. They give it justice, for a lack of better words. Has that been your experience with working with the young people?
Absolutely. It was music to my ears when you said that data. So that data they're just numbers, right? And then they're very significant numbers, but you couldn't have said it any better when you said dig deep. Because when you hear their voice, you're like, wow. Because many times as you analyze that data, you start making I guess um getting conclusions based upon that data. And then when you hear the student, you're like, oh, wow, I didn't quite see it that way. And then it makes more sense
Mhm.
why you see the dips or the improvement because you're listening to their stories. I love that. Dig deep. We're grounded when we get the voice of the students. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. And so I had a chance. I did some website stalking. I did go on ZipporahMiller.com and I did some research. And so I am aware that mental health for both students and educators happens to be among your priorities. And so my question to you is, what role do school board members play in developing and supporting mental health programming in schools?
Oh, what a great question. They play a critical role. And number one is the policy, right? So we talked about our role setting policy. This is huge. So I'm going to just give an example.
Okay.
As you start seeing, looking at data, but I think the data that I'm talking about here is um, qualitative data. So I started getting emails. And when I first took on this role, and I came in with the mindset that mental health was going to be a priority. But when I started getting emails, and many of the emails were just talking about bullying and
Mm,
bullying in schools, and then I started looking at where it was happening in the middle schools. I said to myself, well, let me go look at our policy. Because if I'm getting this many emails, let me start at the root. That's a policy, right? So let me look at our policy. Is our policy strong enough in order to ensure that we're providing the proper supports in the schools, in all schools, even though I know I saw it in middle schools. And so setting policy would be one in terms of supporting mental health. And what I found was, as I dug into that policy, I found there were areas where we could improve. And so that's why it's important when we are making decisions that we look at numerous data points before we jump to a conclusion. So
mhm,
I looked at the policy. I also looked at the day-to-day happenings from the central office perspective. What role do they play in supporting students and really doing education around bullying and reporting, and how we're supporting the students who are being bullied and the students who are exhibiting the bullying procedures, and then also reading through those emails to see if there was a pattern in terms of the response at the school level. So I looked at it at different levels. And so in setting policy, the one thing that I did is I really honed in on tightening up that policy in terms of the support to both the student who is being bullied, because we need to make sure that they're restored. We need to make sure that they have the appropriate supports and counseling and every support that mechanism that they need so they also feel safe when they're going to school. But then there's the student who is exhibiting the bullying behavior. While there were some measures that were in place, I didn't think they were strong enough. And if we're going to prevent bullying so that all students are safe, then we really need to look at what is it that the student needs in order for us to support them so that they're resorting to bullying, but they're resorting to the bullying because there's an underlying, there's something that we really need to get to the root of. So that's where I looked at strengthening the policy so that we can work with the student and the families so that it's not just one level of supports, but there's different levels of supports. So that's setting policy. So the other area in which we are critical in terms of supporting mental health is budget. So all of this can't be done if the budget allocation isn't there. So that's another thing that I fought for this year, where I said, if we're going to have the supports, do we have adequate staffing at different levels so that they can support the schools, right? So clearly, what I would want is to have a staff member at every school who, pays close attention to this. So, however, we only have a finite budget. So I said, well, what are other ways and what are programs that we can put in place? And so I worked with the administration to look at other ways. We did increase a staff member at the central office level, but their role is not a central office level staffing, even though that's where they'll be housed. This individual will be going to schools and actually bolstering the skill sets of the counselors and the teachers to help work with students who, in terms of preventing bullying, to be able to recognize it quickly, to be able to work with students to ensure that we have a culture and climate in which bullying is not in place. So we did increase staffing, but I also advocated for calming spaces in each school at the elementary and middle school level. Again, that requires budget allocations. So when you look at the discipline data, why are students being sent to the office, And while that's not bullying, but sometimes that triggers bullying behavior, right? So I said, let's ensure that we are addressing students to help them develop their self-regulation skills. And if we're always putting punitive measures when something happens to disrupt a class, then we're not really helping the student understand what am I really going through? What are my emotions and how can I process my emotions? And I did some research on calming spaces in different school districts and how it impacted the culture of the school. And so I said to myself, while I would like to have a calming room in every school in the school system, let's start somewhere. So we did some research and put budget allocations so that we can have enough supplies that in every elementary and in every middle school starting this year, they have materials to have calming spaces. So excited. I still have the memo because when I got it, I was so excited. And it didn't come just with the materials. It came with some guidelines, with some professional learning for the school so they can understand how to effectively use those spaces. Because it's not just send a child over there, right? There is some professional learning that needs to happen before we can start using the common spaces. And my goal is to look at the data, and my hope is that students can start from an early age being able to understand that, you know what, if I'm upset, it's okay. Give me a moment. Let me process my emotions. Let me learn how to effectively or appropriately process my emotions. And then when I'm ready to come back to class, I can come back to class. So that's another area. I think I talked about program approval is another area in which we support mental health and also in advocating for the community. And my advocacy was grounded in not just it being a priority for me and the data that I saw, but the data that was coming from the community. Those emails as they came, it really, it broke my heart to hear one after another who said, and I don't think they responded, my child doesn't feel safe. Well, I want every child to be safe in their learning environment. They can't learn if they don't feel safe. So advocating for them, and most importantly, implementation. So I consistently am meeting with the admin teams and staff members to see how it's being implemented, how it's going. Are there things that we can do differently so that we can ensure that this programs are being implemented with fidelity? And I'm sorry it took so long. This is an area that excites me so much because I believe that, academic success cannot be at its peak if we don't address the mental wellness of students as well as staff.
Yeah, so I know the Miss Dr. Kenya audience is so tired of hearing me talk about Maslow, but that's it, right? We cannot self-actualize if we do not have those lower level needs and self-esteem, belonging, safety, all of the things when we talk about safe and supportive schools, that's what we're referring to. And so you cannot self-actualize if you do not have those things. So I agree that I've been on that soapbox as well, so you're not alone with that either, Dr. Miller. I'm happy to hear that the Common Quarters are being implemented this year, so that's fantastic. I hope that students are getting great benefit from that. And I'm glad to know that there's going to be some ongoing professional development around that. So thank you for your efforts. So I heard you say and talk about like the larger community. Um, so I have a couple of follow-up questions as it relates to that. Um, I think I want to start with when we think about the larger community, especially in Prince George's County, I have I work with lots of PG County schools, And what I have really, really found in my efforts, I've been going to schools, working with parent engagement assistants, some community schools, leaders within their schools. And I am really, really finding that, especially at the elementary school level, there is a significant number of um, English language learners whose parents want to be involved, but there's a language barrier, and then there's also issues with access to resources. And then some of them have some justifiable fears about, seeking resources. And then, with working with some of the older students, the high school students, then I'm aware of, the nuanced needs as it relates to gender identity and sexuality, right? So we have some LGBTQ plus students, and then, the needs of BIPOC students and, all of the things. And so how do school board members balance the needs between all of these diverse populations? Because every need is real, every need needs to be addressed, and resources are limited, like you talked about that earlier. So how do you kind of balance the nuanced needs of all of these different populations when making policy decisions? I can only imagine that it's extremely difficult.
I'm going to start with we are obligated to ensure that we provide a world-class education for every student. That being said, Prince George's County is so diverse, right? We have a very diverse population and it continues to change. And so when you talk about English language learners, we are obligated to set policies to ensure that we are being inclusive. When we talk about BIPOC, the LGBTQ community, we are obligated that we have equity policies that support every community that we serve. So let me just start with one example. So for our language learners, right? Um, when trying to ensure that we're getting information to the community, while we are able to translate in Spanish and several different other languages, we still don't meet the needs of every language that we serve in Prince George's County. So we need to be able to work with our school principals and our community liaisons. So in the schools, our PTSOs to understand what communities are represented so that we can ensure that we are getting the information to them in a mechanism that reaches them, right? So we might say, oh, we're sending a text message to everybody. Well, that may not be the best way for everybody, right? So we look at different mechanisms in which to get information to different populations. And as much as we say, you know what, we got to save paper. Yes, we do. I'm an advocate. I'm an advocate for that. But if that's the only way we can get to a parent, then that mechanism also needs to be in place. So ensuring that we're meeting the needs of every population is something that we're continuously working on. In terms of our curriculum, we have to ensure that all of our um, resources are culturally responsive.
Mhm.
And we also have an equity office, and we ensure that we continuously are having ongoing equity professional learning. And if you notice, I did not just say training, because it's not training, it's learning. We need to change whether it's behaviors or skills or attitudes. We need to make sure that we're really looking at what biases that we have. So it's continuous equity equity professional learning. And just this past year, this came through the Academic Achievement Committee. We know that we have equity liaisons in every school, and we realize that they're doing all of this extra work and they're doing it above and beyond their regular, responsibilities. So we put in some funding to compensate them because they're working after school, they're working on weekends to ensure that these professional learnings are being implemented. We're really having conversations at the school level to ensure that every staff member, every student, everyone in the Prince George's County Public Schools community feels included, feels that they belong, and most importantly, feels safe,
Mm-hmm.
feels that they have a voice. That is so important. We look at our data, we look at our data in our decision making. We look at our data when we are making decisions. How is it going to impact every community that we're serving? One of the key areas that I will say in this area is community involvement. And I thrive in going out into the community, whether it is a basketball game, whether it is a fair, to see what's happening in the community. Because I want to make sure that I touch every corner to ensure not going to the same, coffee shop all the time, trying different coffee shops. While before I was a board member, this would have been my favorite coffee shop. When I became a board member, I said, sometimes I'm going to switch the grocery store that I go to because I want to learn my entire community. I wanted them to know who I am, and sometimes I may go out and I have my board shirt on and I wear it proudly because I want them to say, hey, oh, are you a school board member? Because I want them to know that reach out to me. Many times they say, I'm sorry to bother you. And when I say you're not bothering me, like, I'm really sorry to bother you. And I'm like, no, you're not. That's why I'm out here. I'm here to advocate for you. It may be a lot, but it's worth it. It's worth every single um person that I meet, every single constituent who says, I'm sorry to bother you. And then when I respond to their email, they're like, oh my God, I didn't know you were going to respond. I was like, yeah, and we get so many emails, but I try my hardest to go through every night to try and make sure that I'm reaching out to them, even though it's just to say I received your email. So community engagement is really important in ensuring that we're really understanding who is in our community and how we can ensure we're meeting their needs. And when we are in a situation where we're not, then we need to immediately start making changes. And while I love to hear the great things that are happening, I also really want to hear what is not working because we can't make change unless I know what is not working.
Yeah. So I can testify to that, right? Like our this conversation is as a result of me reaching out to you via email. So you definitely respond. I appreciate you for that. But how can you've mentioned email, but what are some other ways that community members can engage with you and other school board members to advocate for the needs of their students, especially as it relates to mental health?
One of the ways is really being active in the PTSOs and encouraging the PTSO presidents, which they do, to invite me to their meetings so that I can hear their voices firsthand, inviting me to their schools, inviting me to community events that they're having. And I try to make as many as I can so that I can learn from them. So it's not just emailing me and them coming to that space. I love to come to where they are because just like we talked about the data, right? We talked about looking at data. To me, it is more gratifying when I come to your space, to your school, to your community event, because then I feel that, oh, I get a better picture of how I can better help.
Yeah, I appreciate you for mentioning the you said PTSO, but next month, in the month of November, Ms. Dr. Kenya, we are doing an interview with the Free State PTA president, which is Maryland's state PTA, with Gerard Tyler, and he talks about some of the same information as well. So for those of you listening, just hold on tight. In the month of November, I got you. We do have the Free State PTA president, Gerard Tyler, coming to talk to you about the role of the PTA, but I digress. So school board members are elected officials. I don't know if people know that, if they're aware of that, but I think that's important to highlight because this is an election year, right? So if I am, as a parent, if I am looking to affect change or to maintain what's happening in my I'm going to say daughter because that's what I have in my daughter's school, what type of qualities should I be looking for in my school board member when I go to vote. Um, any day now because we're a couple of weeks from the election up to November 5th, no later than November 5th. So you can vote early, but you can also vote on November 5th. But when I go to the poll, whenever I go, what quality should I be looking at to determine if this is a school board member who will support the needs of my student?
Wow, that is a great question, and I'm so glad you asked. I am a practicing educator, and I will say that when I watch school board members, I started in Prince George's County, I would watch the school board meetings. And one of the things I said is, we don't have educators represented in a board that governs a school system. That didn't make sense to me, and let me explain myself. So when I go to the American Medical Association, when I look at their board and the individuals making decisions for the American Medical Association, they're all in the medical profession or somehow connected deep in the medical profession. So I said, let me try a different one. And I went to the Bar Association. Well, they're all vested and deep in the legal profession.
Mhm.
So then I asked myself, and this is about 20 years ago, I said, so why aren't we represented on our own board, right? Because we understand the depths of what happens or what needs to happen, but not just any educator. So let me preface by saying that someone who is passionate about education,
Mhm.
not just the classroom, not just central office, but passionate about central education from a broad sense, the national stage, the state, and the local level. Many times, voters make decisions about the federal offices, be it the president, the Senate, and the Congress, because those are huge. You see the ads on TV, they're advertised all the time. So they really research those candidates and make those decisions. And they make decisions that impact us. But the decision that impacts us probably the most is the school system. It is the last one that you vote for on the ballot, right? And we are the closest to your local community. So you might say, I don't have any children. How does that impact me? Well, if we don't have a strong education system in our community, then we're not strengthening our community. The safety of our community is determined by our school system. The number of larger businesses that come into a community are determined by the workforce that we develop, right? So our school system is critically important to the growth of our community. So I'm saying that to say, really look at the experience level and somebody who has a broad sense and deep sense of education, who understands education at different levels,
Mhm.
and is also involved in the community. So, okay, you could be an educator. I get it, right? You're saying, okay, well, they shouldn't all be educators. Okay, I would agree with that, right? But how vested are you in the community? When you look at an individual, when you look at their, what is it called, community involvement, is there any? Have I been involved in not just the school board subcommittees? There could be other organizations that you could be involved in, whether it's your sororities, whether it's your, Mocha Moms. How do you serve in those? Do you really look at serving in areas that impacts children and education? So looking at their qualifications in the community and how vested are they in the education of our children in the community, especially if they don't have children, right? Um, if you're a parent, were you involved in your local PTA, PTSO, PTO, parent organization at the school? Did you serve there? And then, do you have a vision and a goal in where our school district needs to go? Um, I'm gonna add one more thing. I can be on a soapbox about this, um, because I really believe that we need to educate ourselves on who is on that ballot and are they the right person in order to move us forward. So do you understand the key issues in our community? Not just for your district, but the entire Prince George's County.
Right.
So while you advocate for the district, and I wholeheartedly do, 100%, I also have to understand that we are one Prince George's County public school. So whatever we advocate for needs to be equitable also across our county. So I really work with my colleagues. Are there individuals who are already working with the county council, with state legislature? And you don't have to know them personally, but do you have initiatives in which you connect with them so that when you serve on this, when you serve as a school board member, you're easily able to get in touch with the right people? When it comes to budget and having conversations, it's not just about the budget, but also having conversations with the county council, also having county conversations with state legislators when we're trying to advocate for more funding. So understanding the key issues and understanding how you can collaborate across the board and not just myopically within the county. I'm gonna add one more.
Go right ahead.
I'm gonna add one more. Can you see proven results with what they have done in the past?
Mm.
So I can tell you what I'm going to do, but if you look at my record, do you see proven results? If you look at another individual, do you see proven results with what they've been doing? Because that tells you whether you're committed to the success of our children.
Thank you. I love that. Um, I asked that question intentionally. Once again, let me just circle back because sometimes you have to repeat stuff for people to really hear it. Myself included. So I'm not coming down on anybody, but it bears repeating. Again, that we are in an election year, right? And yes, I most certainly want you to get out and vote for the president. I most certainly want you to get out and vote for your senators. Um, however, comma, you also have to be mindful of who you elect for, like your local leaders, right? And your school board members are definitely local leaders. As you've heard Dr. Miller talk about, not only do they have an impact on the day-to-day operations of schools, the day-to-day experiences of your students, if you have a student in Prince George's County Public Schools, but their decisions also affect the larger context of the community, right? And so this is not something that you want to go in and do passively. You want to think about all of the things that Dr. Miller talked about. You want to make sure that you are making a decision that benefits you, your family, and the larger Prince George's County community. Well, Dr. Miller, I really have to say that um, outside of sending you an email, we've learned that our paths have crossed in the past. And I have always found you to be really authentic, really passionate about education on every level. I think that your experience is amazing. It's a testament to a lifelong dedication to um, not just academia, right? But I'm going to say whole child development. So yeah, you would think as an educator who is writing textbooks for science that you're heavy on the academics, and you are, but you also are not ignorant of the fact that you cannot excel academically if your mental health is being threatened. And I so appreciate you for making those connections because not everybody understands the connection between mental health and learning. So I appreciate you. I think you already know that you got at least one vote over here in my household. Um,
Thank you.
so I truly appreciate you. And I'm just going to ask you, is there anything that you wanted to say that you have not had a chance to say? Or is there anything that you want to just circle back to and make clear? Do you have the floor? Is there anything that you'd like to say?
I I want to say I'm grateful. I'm grateful to serve, and I'm grateful for you, and for so many reasons. When I called you, I started talking, and you said, Well, let me start here. How are you? I almost cried when you said that
Mm.
because many times people don't think about how are you, right? And then we got into a conversation about mental health. And you don't just advocate for it, you live it and you practice it. And it was evident in that first 10 seconds of our conversation. And I appreciate that. Hence, it was my pleasure to come here because mental health being one of my platforms, it is so important that we recognize people who are not just talking about mental health, but actually a living testimony of saying, I really value mental health. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. That was very kind of you. I appreciate you for that. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to your continued advocacy, your continued eye, your continued passion as we move forward for the next couple of years. I thank you so much again for your dedication to our children here in Prince George's County and at large, apparently all the way in Dubai. And I look forward to future interactions with you. Thank you so much, Dr. Miller, for joining me today. I appreciate you.
Thank you. And I appreciate you as well, Dr. Kenya.
Yeah, and to the Miss Dr. Kenya audience, I hope that you gained something from this. For the past couple of months, I have been intentional about talking to stakeholders at the larger level to help you kind of put all the pieces together. Next month, again, like I was sharing, we're going to get that final piece to the puzzle with the PTA. And then in December, we'll talk about putting it all together. But take notes of all of this information. You guys are getting some really, really good, rich information about how you go about supporting your students in schools. So take notes. Join me again in November, and then in December, we're going to put it all together. Until such time, thank you for joining me. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.